Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Saturday night. It is the 22nd of December 2018. And the topic of tonight's episode for all you Smaulgld game changers is Trump to fire Jerome Powell, the head of the SEC, and will Trump fire Powell, the head of the Fed, and will the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, change the definition of security? So let's get into those stories. Now, a while back, we had been discussing the hypothetical that Trump may end up firing Powell. Trump is very upset with Powell. We documented many of the things that Trump had said, exhorting Powell not to raise rates, saying we had a bigger problem at the Fed than we had with China. He finally, just the day before the announcement, the Fed raised rates again, he said, feel the market. And so Trump has said he's disappointed with Jerome Powell. Now, Bloomberg yesterday, another one of these sources say type of articles, said that President Trump had discussed firing Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell because he was frustrated with the central bank chief. And we had discussed this, if you recall, in an article and a blog post and on a live stream. Will the next Congress audit the Fed and impeach its governors? It was back in October, and we covered it not because we thought it was going to happen, but just because it's a possibility. And I did a little research, and we found out that two things: the president can fire the head of the head of the Fed for cause. Now, we don't know what that is. We're not sure what the guidance is and whether he can actually do it. And clearly, if he did it, there'd be all types of lawsuits and injunctions coming out. But we also saw historically there have been 3 attempts to impeach Fed governors, one back in 1917, one back in 1934, and one in 1985. All went nowhere. Now, I'm not sure that Trump said any of this. I don't think that he's going to do this, but he has put pressure on the Fed. But as we saw yesterday, or last week, earlier in the week, the Fed raised rates anyway. I think they have to prove that they are on whatever path that they're on. And they did have Fed President of San Francisco, John Williams, come out the other day and say, look, we may slow down a bit on the rate hikes, but we probably think 2 is what we'll have next year. And by the way, we're not influenced by stuff Trump says. Could be true. Maybe it's not true. But the point being is that the Fed will always guard its independence. Now, what happened just about 10 minutes ago? Well, check this out. Secretary Treasury Mnuchin says Trump never said he would fire Chairman Powell. Now, this is a breaking story. That's the only thing they said about it. But, you know, Bloomberg had the story. Sources say. They never say who said it. Seems like they almost plant these stories. Trump probably, Mnuchin's probably hedging his words. He probably never said he would fire Powell, but he may have discussed firing Powell. Who knows? But I just wanted to raise it because it is something that we had discussed, and Trump is unconventional, and he is putting into place, and you can see the mainstream media's defense of the Fed as if they need defending because otherwise our economy can't run. It's going to embarrass the foreigners and so on. What they don't realize, well, maybe they realize and they don't care, but the Fed is different than all other central banks in that the other central banks are actually run somewhat by the elected officials, in that the treasury of the countries own their banks. And it is a political position, and if they want loose monetary policy, their elected officials can support loose monetary policy. They don't have this independent Fed, so to speak, who conducts monetary policy supposedly outside of political. They're supposed to do what's right for the economy, and they're supposed to follow their dual mandate of full employment and price stability. And it's debatable whether they do a good job of that or not. Now, here's an interesting one. We like to think, or maybe we don't like to think, I know that in the United States there's a politically correct movement. We have that in England for sure. We have it in Australia. A lot of the Anglo-Saxon countries have that. And it's essentially it's more of a left-wing thing where there's certain things you can and cannot say. It all revolves around being offended by things. Now here is Matteo Salvini. I think he's the foreign minister of Italy, and it seems that Italy is infected with the same issue. Now there he is. That's his food. He's going to have his lunch, and he says, "Oggi a pranzo mi tratto bene, tortellini freschi emiliani e ragù con la salsiccia con un boccale di birra, sperando che qualche giornalista or qualche professorone di sinistra non si offendano." Now what he's saying there is, today I treated myself. He's a typical guy. He's on Twitter, this is Twitter I think, showing off he's going to treat himself well today. He's going to have a little tortellini, a little sauce with sausage, and a big old jug of beer. And he says he hopes that some journalist or some professor, and he calls him professorone, which means a big professor, some big left-wing professor, is not offended. So it appears that this is an issue around the world, or at least in the Western world. I don't know why he would think that tortellini fresca is gonna offend some journalist or some big left-wing professor. Interesting nonetheless. Okay, what else do we got for today? Now tomorrow we're going to cover this issue. I just want to mention it as a placeholder. Tomorrow we'll spend a lot of time on this. Louis Gohmert. He is a congressman really from Texas, and he has introduced a bill that removes liability protections for social media companies that use algorithms to hide, promote, or filter user content. We're going to go through what that legislation is. I'm going to give you some examples on how it might apply, what the liability may be, and also the chances of it passing. We're not going to cover that tonight, but it is breaking news, and it's definitely worth looking into. We also had in the crypto world, we're going to go through the crypto prices, this from the head of the co-founder of Ethereum, Joseph Lubin. "I'm calling the crypto bottom," he says. All right. "The bottom is marked by an epic amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt from our friends in the fourth and fifth crypto estates." Well, Bitcoin up today 3% to $3,991. Bitcoin Cash flat, but Bitcoin Cash had been way up. Bitcoin Cash is now at 196, and Litecoin up to 3183. That's up nearly 4%. I should do a poll and ask you guys whether you think the worst is over in the crypto space or whether it's got more to go. Let me just see if there's anything else on... No, I'll save that for tomorrow night, the Louis Gohmert bill. I've got some examples of certain things, so we'll get to that tomorrow. And let's see. Oh, in cryptos, Backed. Those of you who've been following Backed. Backed is a venture between the New York Stock Exchange, Microsoft, Boston Consulting, and Starbucks. And it's supposed to provide a crypto trading platform starting with Bitcoin, in which they'll have futures contracts with, quote, physically delivered Bitcoin as settlement rather than just settling in cash. And supposedly one of the goals is also to allow adoption and being able to pay or convert your Bitcoin so that you can use it in commerce at Starbucks. And they claim they've got other merchants that are interested, a lot of institutional interest. And it was supposed to launch in December. They pushed it back for regulatory issues to January 24th. And now they're saying maybe the CFTC won't be able to act in time. Not sure if it's a government shutdown issue or just they're not ready. But they're saying it might happen within the end of the month still. We'll keep an eye on that. Some people think that is going to change the dynamic of at least the price of Bitcoin short term and possibly create a new institutional investor class longer term. And also, it's funny, I picked up on this Bitcoin ETF ATM thing the other day, and now we're seeing a lot of stories on it, noting that Bitcoin ATMs have doubled in number. We did a poll on this, remember, just a couple of days ago, and about 40% of you said if you had the choice between saving your money, putting it in an ATM, it's only $20, or putting it into a lotto machine, you would put it into the Bitcoin ATM. Now, if you take away saving the money, it appears that if you're going to gamble, it sounds like people would gamble on the Bitcoin Litecoin ATM much more than the lotto ATM, which leads me to believe that the more these things get put out there, the more people are going to dump money into them just on a flyer. Not as I would think, as someone pointed out, the premiums or whatever they call it, the commissions are probably very high. I wouldn't expect people to dump large amounts of cash in there, but just to pick up bits and pieces. And if it's on their phone, then I think merchants will want to unlock that money that's in there and accept it and run it through a payment processor. They can add to their revenues that way. And since you put the machine in the store, people put the money in, you make the commission on the exchange over. If the price goes up, the person comes back and you sell them, I don't know, a pack of beer, whatever they bought, you can buy in that store. But it's something it was big trend in 2018, and there's about 3,000 of them in the United States alone and about 4,100 worldwide. And I think we're ready for... Oh, yes, we are. I think we are ready for our story for the evening, which is, will the SEC change the definition of security? We're going to talk about what the implications of that might be. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
Right. Well, the SEC has had a definition of what a security is going all the way back to 1934. The 33 Act of 1933, Securities Act, and then the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. And in order for those entities to do their job and regulate securities, they have to know what a security is. So they had come up with a definition of security, and that definition has served them well for the last 72, 74 years. And back in, must have been 2014. So I've been covering cryptocurrencies for a long time, since 2012, 13. And one of the things that I was noticing, when no one was really focused on regulation, nor were the regulators really, was that Bitcoin regulation was eventually going to come, and we were going to see the CFTC, the SEC, perhaps the Fed, the IRS, the Department of Justice, all take a look at what is this new thing and how do we regulate it? Do we ban it? If we're going to ban it, we have to come up with the rationale to ban it. If we're going to try to stop it, we need to have the ability to stop it. If we're going to embrace it, we have to figure out how do we embrace it and not have it go wild and lose investor protections. So I did a big overview on it. I'll leave it in the show notes tomorrow, back over 4 years ago, on what might happen. And pretty much it's what's happened. Not tooting my horn, but it's pretty obvious if you follow regulatory bodies, you kind of guess where they might head. Although I was incorrect in one area, and that's this area about the changing of the definition of the term security. I had believed that they would possibly change the definition of the word security in order to include cryptocurrencies in that definition so that they may regulate them. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So back in 2014, I was talking about, well, here's Ronald Reagan. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Well, that's government regulation. But I saw that they were going to regulate the Bitcoin at the federal and state level. This was right after Mt. Gox, so we figured there'd be a lot of issues with regulating. Interesting here, I didn't know who Joe Manchin was at the time. I know he is now. He is a senator from West Virginia. And he wrote a letter back then. No, he addressed it to the Fed, which is an interesting place to address a letter about Bitcoin, and that was Yellen at the time, and to the Treasury Department, it was Jacob Lew under Obama, and to the Office of Control of Currency, and to the FDIC, and to the CFTC, and to the Securities Exchange Commission head. And these are all the potential areas that might have some say in regulating Bitcoin. And Joe Manchin is the Democratic senator from West Virginia. He actually voted for it with the Republicans for Justice Kavanaugh in his confirmation hearing. But he called on regulators to, quote, cripple Bitcoin before Americans will be left holding the bag on a valueless currency. Mr. Manchin urged regulators to take appropriate action to limit the abilities of this highly unstable currency. I urge the regulators to work together to act quickly and prohibit this dangerous currency from harming hardworking Americans. Well, that didn't happen. Over the last 4 years, we've seen the SEC, we've seen the CFTC all embrace regulating cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin rather than banning them and shutting them down. Now, at the time, there was a lot of people who thought that that was going to happen. I was among them. I thought that what the government would want to do is shut this down because, in a sense, it's a competing currency. This is before you had ICOs. This is before some of the promise of just the concept of tokenizing assets, DOA. None of that was really in the forefront. Most of it was Bitcoin. People didn't talk about alternative cryptocurrencies, altcoins, Litecoin, none of that. Ethereum wasn't even out yet, I don't think. They were all talking about Bitcoin. So I noticed at the time that Bitcoin was already banned in China, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam. And I noticed that the initial pronouncements from the U.S. regulators about Bitcoin, this is back in 2014, actually appeared benign and a little bit encouraging. And that's when we had the Department of Justice said that Bitcoin could be a legal means of exchange, which seems strange to me. And that Bernanke, who was the chair at the time, said Bitcoin holds long-term promise. Didn't say we got to come out and get rid of it. Now, I said this doesn't mean that they were giving it a pass. It means that Bitcoin, I've been thinking through this thesis for a long time now when I say they want to co-opt it, roll it into the regulatory scheme, and eventually the infrastructure of Wall Street and Silicon Valley will benefit from it. I wrote that Bitcoin could be controlled, co-opted, taxed, and regulated. Bitcoiners have the misguided belief that Bitcoin is impervious to government control because it's decentralized and peer-to-peer. These Bitcoin prayer words give Bitcoiners a false sense of the cryptocurrency's invincibility, and I said at that point, Bitcoin regulation is coming. And indeed, many people now welcome Bitcoin regulation because it may pull them out of the hole that they're in now, because if you have Bitcoin regulation and investors can feel comfortable investing in it, well, they will invest in it, and the price should go higher if more people are chasing the same asset. But then I noted that Bitcoin, once Bitcoin is traded on an exchange, especially ones located in the United States, and this is before Coinbase or any of these others. This is when you only had that Mt. Gox and some overseas ones. But then you would have the identity of the Bitcoin users known. Under Know Thy Customer, this has all happened. Or Bitcoin is traded in ETF, hasn't happened yet. Then the bulk of Bitcoin that changes hands from the large private individual holdings, the few original early Bitcoin adopters, who at the time owned half the existing Bitcoin, would change to institutional investors and then through the government through confiscation. Then you would have taxation and regulation of Bitcoin, and that would all be easily imposed. This has all happened. And then I said, paradoxically, more regulation will also probably mean that Bitcoin will be subject to greater manipulation. And we did see, and I think it's always been manipulated, but I think the futures markets did help to bring the price of Bitcoin way down off of its bubble. And that was a direct result of having regulation that allowed there to be a CME and CBOE Bitcoin futures contract. Now, the CFTC was one of the first to, I updated this article in September of 2015, they recognized Bitcoin as a commodity, which probably meant, with some coordination, that it probably isn't a security. So gold is treated as a commodity, silver as a commodity, copper, oil, and they have Bitcoin as a commodity. And it doesn't make sense necessarily for it to be a commodity, but it did make sense for it not to be a security because there is no Bitcoin corporation and you don't make money because Bitcoin doesn't do anything, just like gold doesn't do anything to make you money. The price of it goes up and down, but that's not the same as a group of people making it do something. That's part of the definition of a security. So one of the things I always say about gold is, and Buffett trashes this, it doesn't pay a dividend. No, it doesn't. There's no company that can make gold any better than it is. It's not supposed to pay a dividend. Companies pay dividends. Companies they issue shares, which are securities. They can go up or down based on how well the company does. So, former CFTC chairman at the time, Bart Chilton, argued that if Bitcoin is a commodity used as a derivative held for use in the future, then the CFTC could regulate it. And that's exactly what happened. They regulated it, and now they have Bitcoin futures that the CFTC oversees. Then I asked, could Bitcoin be regulated by the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission? Now, the way I looked at it was that Bitcoin was not a security. This is to meet the test, which we're going to go through in a minute, of being, you don't make your money as a result of a corporation or a group of people that are making Bitcoin better, and therefore it makes revenues and you get the dividends. It doesn't do that. So at the time, the chair, Mary Jo White, wrote in a letter to, now they're concerned about Homeland Security and governmental affairs. She said, whether a virtual currency is a security under federal securities law and therefore subject to our regulation is dependent on facts and circumstances. Okay. Regardless of whether an underlying virtual currency itself is a security, interest issued by entities owning virtual currencies or providing returns based on assets such as virtual currencies likely would be securities and therefore subject to our regulation. And that is correct. She's talking about what eventually became ICOs. If you're going to have a token, which is a virtual currency, but the return, which Bitcoin has no return, like gold has no return. I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm just saying in that aspect, they are the same. But other virtual currencies, if you're going to get a return from them based on some type of action or profit, then they would be securities and subject to their regulation. This is back in 2013, well before the current SEC has actually come out and said that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are not securities. And that was pretty obvious to me at the time as well. Now, what is a security? So this Section 3, this is what they're going to change in the 34 Act. I'm not going to read it to you. I'll paraphrase that a security is any number of a whole laundry list of stocks, treasury stocks, security futures, swaps, bonds, and so on. And then they list a whole bunch of puts, calls, so on. In general, if it's even called a security, then that's a security. But essentially, you have to have some type of benefit that you get from holding that security. That benefit is based on the actions of the issuer who has created that security. So if they're going to pay you a dividend or royalty, or they're going to make the stock go higher even if they don't pay a dividend based on the work that they put into it. And that's generally what a security is. Like a dollar is not a security. Gold is not a security. Mining shares are securities. Why? It's got nothing to do with whether they're gold. It's that the mining company has to make you money, and they issue a share certificate, and the value of that share certificate depends on what they do, what work they put into it, if they can pay you a dividend or push it higher. So I wrote that it's clear that a Bitcoin ETF would be subject to SEC regulation, and it is, and they haven't approved one yet. But what about the mere existence of and trading of Bitcoin among private parties? Now, this is where I was concerned. This is why I wanted nothing to do with Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin was determined to be a security, which I didn't think it was, and it clearly isn't, but at the time, if it was deemed to be a security, what it means to be a security isn't just, well, now it's a security, and now we know it's a security, and that's the definition. There's certain consequences of it being a security. First of all, any security that's issued pursuant to the SEC rules says that you must either register a registration statement which contains all material information about that security with the SEC, or claim some type of exemption why you don't have to register your security. And those registration requirements can be dispensed with if you sell it only to non-U.S. persons, you sell it to only U.S. investors, qualified institutional buyers, you do overseas offerings, Reg S, Rule 144A. You need to go into what those mean, but the idea is that you only sell a limited amount to a limited group of people, not to the public, and they're all big-time investors. So they don't necessarily, the idea there is they don't need the protection of the SEC. They don't need the protection of the Act. But generally, if you just want to issue securities to the public and you want to raise as much money as possible, you have to go through a route where you admit that it's a security, you agree that it's a security, and you agree to file a bunch of documents and statements and financials and statements and information about the company such that an investor can get an understanding of all the material points of why they might invest in this company and what the risks are. There's risk factors and so on. Now, absent doing that, let's say Bitcoin was a security and no one filed a registration statement. Now, who would there be to file it? It's a decentralized network. Who's going to file on behalf of the network? That's why I thought it'd be ridiculous for them to even consider Bitcoin being a security. But a ICO is clearly a security. You get together with me and we decide to issue tokens that are based on the amount of mugs I sell. Well, those tokens have a value based on how many mugs I sell. And you're counting on the company, the Smaulgld company, to make you money on the basis of the efforts that I put in. So if I'm going to sell those tokens, I would have to register them with the SEC and provide you information about where I get the mugs, how the mugs are made, how much money it costs me to get the mugs, what the risk factors are if my mug supplier doesn't supply the mugs anymore, how much I make per mug, how much does it cost to ship the mugs, what's the historic amount of mugs I sold over the last year, possibly project how many mugs I might sell over the next 3 years. Do I make a profit? Do I not make a profit? File audited financial statements and so on. And then you would say, oh, okay, I can make a decision now whether to invest in Smaulgld mug tokens. But if all I do is say I want to issue a bunch of mug tokens and I go on YouTube or I pay some guy on YouTube and say, buy Smaulgld mug tokens, they're awesome. See, there's a difference between pumping mugs as just a mug and pumping tokens related to mugs that are securities. One has to be registered, the other doesn't. So, back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin clearly is not a security, but they hadn't declared it a security then. They hadn't not declared it a security at the time. I was concerned that if Bitcoin was deemed to be a security and you owned some, let's say you bought some, and then each time you sold it, if you sold it to somebody else, you would be selling an unregistered securities, and you might have liability under the Securities Act. You have no documents you can show, and that's why I was concerned about Bitcoin, even though it didn't make sense that Bitcoin would ever be deemed to be a security. And then I was concerned, I used this Humpty Dumpty Alice statement, when I use a word, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. So I thought that maybe they could say that they could just add language to the statute that says, where, you know, up above where it says the term security means any note, stock, treasury stock, security, future, that whole laundry list. They could just put any cryptocurrency, and then bingo bango, Bitcoin would be a security just because they say it is, not because it meets the Powell test that they call it. I think it's called the Howey test of having a corporation or some entity on which you rely upon to create value for you in order to give value to your instrument or holding of the security. They could have just thrown in without even, they could just go past the Howey test and just say any of these foregoing items, and including cryptocurrencies, and then boom, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, anything would be deemed a security, and you'd have to have it registered. So I said if the SEC wants to regulate Bitcoin, the definition of security can be amended to add any unregistered private currency. That was what I thought, how they might be able to do it. Now, the SEC wouldn't do it. Congress would do it. And then I said, alternatively, the SEC could use language in the, what did I say here? Language in the, there you go. Language in the definition of security, any instrument commonly known as a security, to determine that Bitcoins are securities by arguing that Bitcoins are commonly known as securities. And again, it would just be their interpretation. They wouldn't even have to amend the statute at all. They would just say, well, everyone calls Bitcoin a security, so under the catch-all, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are commonly referred to as securities. Now, that wouldn't fly after the CFTC labeled them a commodity, so it'd be hard to use that. But at the time, they hadn't been labeled commodities yet when I wrote this. Now, let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, if Bitcoins are deemed to be securities under the SEC definition, the consequences could be dramatic. And this is probably why they didn't, and they really aren't securities. Because under the Act of 33, Securities Act of 33, you have to register them, and they hadn't been registered, and millions of them been traded, and they'd all been done outside of any recognized exemption, and they hadn't been registered. This is exactly where we are, not with Bitcoin, but with all the ICOs over the past couple of years. All of them, probably pretty much all of them, should have been registered with the SEC, and they weren't. The only way they would have passed muster as not having to register, in most cases, would be if they didn't provide the people receiving the tokens any ownership interest in the DAO or the company that was issuing the tokens, which would pretty much make them worthless anyway. So it's kind of a catch-22 for all of the ICOs that have already come out, because if you structure it so that people receive the benefit of the efforts of the DAO or the corporation or whatever entity issues the tokens, well, then it's by definition a security and would have to be registered. And we know none of the ICOs are registered with the SEC. Now, if you structure it such that maybe you offered it only to accredited investors, the rich people, or you did it overseas and you did a formal, you claimed an exemption, well, that's fine. But for the most part, that's not how these ICOs are run. They were run on YouTube with white papers, which are not registration statements. And therefore, most ICOs are problematic because either they got around the SEC rules by not really giving you something, or they didn't register them, which means they have legal liability, or they did it correctly, but you can't have them because they were done, issued only in limited amount to wealthy people and to people overseas. Then it says if the SEC takes the position that Bitcoin are unregistered securities, and then I say there's no indication they have formulated such opinion, anyone who sells or ever sold unregistered Bitcoin could be deemed to be in violation of securities laws. And that's the case with a lot of the ICOs. And that's why a lot of the platforms won't carry those ICO tokens. They're concerned about that. All right. Now, let's see, where are we now with all this? I mean, this was all a good setup for what they're going to recommend now. Then they finally said, while not labeling Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies Ponzi schemes, it's very important. Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme. You could be against Bitcoin, but it is legally not a Ponzi scheme. If it was a Ponzi scheme, they would not allow CFTC futures on a Ponzi scheme. People argue all the time, it's a Ponzi scheme. It is not. Legally, it is not a Ponzi scheme. The government does not allow you to trade legal derivatives off a Ponzi scheme. So by definition and by law, Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme. However, the SEC has issued a warning on the use of cryptocurrencies in Ponzi schemes, and that's clearly can be done, but you can do Ponzi schemes with any currency. All right, so where does this leave us now? Well, there is a new bipartisan legislation pending, and they're looking to change that definition of securities to exclude cryptocurrencies. Well, that makes sense. I don't think they're not going to exclude ICOs. People often confuse when they say all cryptocurrencies are going to zero. They mean everything. They have no idea what they're talking. Cryptocurrencies are different than ICOs. ICOs are securities. They basically give you a token. It could be digitized T. It could be digitized value of whatever it is on that the company's stated purpose is. That's not a cryptocurrency. That is a crypto token. It is a cryptography, but a cryptocurrency doesn't make any money. It's just issued, and it's on a large decentralized platform, or it could be a centralized platform, which is why XRP and Ripple, they may determine may be a security because of the centralization of it. But that one's kind of a hybrid. But the idea of the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, Dash, Zcash, those types are pretty much, I would say, not crypto, are cryptocurrencies and not securities. So what they want to do is amend the Securities Exchange Act, but what a security is, and add a new definition for digital tokens. Now this gets sloppy because now it's the same thing. A digital token could be Bitcoin, but it could also be some token. You might think of it as some token in a ICO. But what they're saying is that the decentralized networks don't neatly fit within the existing regulatory structure. So they're trying to find a way to include cryptocurrencies by excluding them so that they don't come up in securities issues. Now that is 180 degrees what I thought would happen. If you remember, if you go back to the analysis I did in 2014, I thought that the SEC, the Manchin was on the right track, that he was writing to every portion of the government that might potentially have oversight over Bitcoin to try to ban it. And I thought one way they might be able to do that is say, short of banning it, we're going to deem it to be a security. We're going to add the definition to include Bitcoin, or to change the language so that it picks up something like Bitcoin. And therefore, the only way you're going to be able to do anything with Bitcoin is if you register it, and basically shut it down pretty much right away, because you couldn't trade it and you'd have to register it, and who would be able to register it? No one could register it, so then it would be pretty much illegal because the trading of it would be unregistered. But these two congressmen, they're bringing a bill, and I haven't taken a look at the language yet, that's going to exclude the digital currency. So they shouldn't use the word token, but digital currencies, and that would mean like Bitcoin and Monero and Litecoin and those. And it's called the Token Taxonomy Act. And it will define what a digital token is, meaning a cryptocurrency, and clarify that the securities laws will not apply to cryptocurrencies once they become a fully functioning network. Now, the reason that is in there is due to Ethereum lobbying on shore, because Ethereum appears to have been an ICO when they did it. But once it loses its initial sponsors and they don't do anything and it becomes decentralized and it's just out there, now they're trying to say that under this new law, which is not passed, this new definition of securities, that something like Ethereum would not become deemed a would not be deemed a security. It would be deemed a cryptocurrency or a token or whatever they want to call it. In any event, we'll follow up and see where that goes. But I think SEC Chairman Clayton has already said that he does not. They've actually issued guidance that they think that Bitcoin and Ether are not securities. and that they're regulated as commodities under the CFTC. But that is not the same thing as the law, because the SEC doesn't write the law. The SEC is an administrative agency, and they've just made that determination. So it looks like Congress needs to update the law. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in the chats over here. All right, let's see what we got. Lots of comments today. De La Ville is here. Hello. Not me says this isn't good. I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, I'm not dismissing the comment. It's just I don't know at what point during the live stream he made that comment. Pablo Pena is here. All right. ASMR people, although the markets don't like rate hikes, I bet the markets would tank if Trump fires him. Yes, I don't think the markets would take well to that. Most people in the markets are not looking to end the Fed or anything like that. They just assume the Fed is there. It's an institution, and they're not going to do anything about it. They hate surprises. American Supertramp says mugs to zero in 2019. Maybe mugs in general, but not Smaulgld mugs. They always have a collector's value. Stocks will tank for sure. $5 penny says hi all. All right. ASMR people, if anyone wants to short mugs, I'll let you borrow mine for a price. No naked short selling mugs. Yeah, that aftermarket in the mugs there. Is 100 ounces, says $5 penny, a lot in your book? De La Ville says no. It's a lot in my book. How much is that? 100 ounces of silver. Well, that's an easy calculation because it's what? $14.50? No. I mean, almost $1,500. I'd say it's a lot. $5 penny says, I was looking in a Roman coin book, and the Roman value of their silver downs, 130 grams of copper would be 120 plus 90% copper pennies. And it took 4 of those for a silver denarius. You know, I had done a, I'll try to remember to put in the show notes tomorrow, or you can look it up. I think I put the decline and fall of the Roman denarius. Look that one up. And then if that doesn't work, add Smaulgld and you'll get it. I went through the whole history of the denarius and how much silver was in the denarius. I think it's you know what? I'll look it up right now and I'll slide it into the chat here. The decline and fall of the Roman denarius. I use DuckDuckGo now, but let's see. It should show up. And, oh, that wasn't the title that I used because it shows a Lou Rockwell article. But I called it The Decline and Fall of the World's First Silver Empire. There it is. My article, I'm sure, is better than his, but that's just a matter of opinion. That's just your opinion, man. All right, there's the link to The Decline and Fall of the World's First Silver Empire. And then I did another one, The Decline and Fall of the World's Last Silver Empire. And that refers to Los Estados Unidos. All right, let's see. No, please check out that article. Seth Shepard says 100 ounces is a good start, especially if yeah, of course it is. Joshua Roberts is here. Joshua says SEC going to change definition of secure to define only things that are ceramic based. Well, I'm going to lobby for them to include things that are glass based. And you know why that is? Well, Smaulgld has moved into glassware, knowing that mugs may be too expensive for some people and that glass has been used for drinking vessels for many, many years. So you do want to get involved with some Smaulgld glass, and Smaulgld shot glasses are now also available. There's the Smaulgld glass. And as I mentioned, we've also now got Smaulgld shot glasses, pet bowls. You go over to the Smaulgld store. You can just go to smaulgld.com. You can check all of it out. All types of products. But there is the Smaulgld shot glass, newly minted. Yes, I mint mugs and glasses. De La Ville says $5 penny. Silver is money just like copper and gold and all the metals. So I don't think you should look at it as... Then it says fan. I think people should buy, this is Seth Shepard, gold, silver in a portfolio of 5 to 10 coins. And Holloman says Bitcoin is pumping now. Yeah, I believe it is. It's been really... This is a case It's opposite what's happening in the stock market, which is 2 or 3 steps back, 1 step forward. We are seeing 2 and 3 steps forward and 1 step back. But let's check out where El Crypto is right now. Oh, yes, Litecoin at 31.81 and Bitcoin at 39.83, almost at 4,000. $5 penny. Silver is a better buy, and copper is still face value, even though the U.S. nickel is worth about 11 cents. Actually, the nickel's not worth that much right now. That was a long time ago. You know where you can find all that out? It's called coinflation. I'll tell you right now what a nickel is worth based on it. A nickel is 25% nickel and 75% copper. And the price of a nickel, the value of a nickel right now, our survey says it's worth 3.5 cents. Metal value. Its metal value is 71% of the face value. There was a time when it was worth maybe 10, 11 cents, but that's when nickel, right now, nickel is trading at about $4.87 a pound. Like 5 years ago, it was trading more than twice that. It was like almost $10 a pound. And that's where you might have gotten, not 11 cents, maybe 6 or 7 cents. But then again, it cost the fabrication charge. You'd have to include that in there too. So, yeah, a nickel could be worth 11 cents when you figure it had a metallic value of 8 or 9 cents and then fabrication charge for sure. But right now, the melt value of a nickel is, according to coinflation, is just 3.5 cents, almost 3.6 cents. Glad I cleared that up for you. Now, Seth Shepard, stay out of debt and do not use leverage. De La Ville, have you been listening to this channel very long? $5 penny. No. Pablo Pina. Then you won't get all these mug references. Who's having coffee now with their mug? Says Pablo Pina. And what he's talking about is what we started the show off with are the Smaulgld mugs, because they... Let's see. We got to show you the Smaulgld mugs, because if you don't see the Smaulgld mugs, you don't know what he's talking about. We started out with coffee mugs. They are the classic and super classic mugs. The classic is red interior, and then it also has a red handle. And the classic mug doesn't go for all that color stuff. It just has the white and the logo of the Smaulgld on it. But I'll bring them up for you here. Here they are. So your classic mug is at the top. Your super classic mug at the bottom. And you can see those. So many of the Smaulgld game changers, and they're called game changers because they follow the Smaulgld channel, because I'm always pointing out a lot of the supposed game changer stories like gold back yuan and all these other supposed game changers for the metals. In fact, I even have an eraser, a game changer eraser. There you go. You get those at the Smaulgld store too, the game changer eraser. Anyway, yes, that's what we do here at Smaulgld. We try to explode a lot of the foolish myths that obviously have been wrong. I mean, gold-silver ratio is unsustainable. They've been saying that from 50 to 60 to 1, 70 to 1, 80 to 1, 90 to 1. Silver shortage, gold back yuan, COMEX default, JP Morgan's got 10 trillion ounces of silver, all that nonsense. And they're going to let it ride, and it's over now, and silver set to skyrocket. It's here you go. This is what they do. They tell you this. Silver set to skyrocket. Game over. Game changer. All right. Andrew is using his mug as a pen holder. I thought so based on your comment. No problem, says De La Ville. You may hold whatever opinion you wish. I have formed a different view. You argue amongst yourselves. All right. $5 penny. I'm living at the bottom of metal's ladder. I'm happy with that. Gold is a rare find indeed. CAD, losing ground to Big Brother, says Northman Pablo Pina. All right, let me just get rid of it. I don't want to have this guy in a silver rocket for too long. I think that sends the wrong message. You might think I'm pumping silver, and indeed I am not pumping anything other than mugs. Mugs, by the way, they also come for your favorite adult beverages. There you go. There's the Smaulgld mugs. I love the Frosted. I like both of those. Those are actually, well, I don't want to say they're better. You use one in the morning and one at night. You use the coffee mugs in the morning, beer mugs and steins in the evening. And I would be remiss if I did not give you just a general Smaulgld link so you can get you can visit the Smaulgld store, because it's very important. A lot of people maybe don't know where to get their Smaulgld merchandise, and I'm going to leave you that right now. It's in the notes. It's in the live chat. Boom, visit the Smaulgld store. Also, if you're interested in precious metals, I'm not advising you buy. It's not investment advice to buy or sell silver or gold. But if you're going to, I do have affiliate links where if you buy, Smaulgld makes a small commission, and that's important. And you pay no more, no less than if you visited, for example, SD Bullion yourself. If you visit through this link here, Smaulgld does get a small commission. And again, not investment advice to buy gold or silver, but there's the link there. And also, we have those Litecoin and Bitcoin silver rounds coming from Golden Eagle Coin. They're 9995 silver, 999 silver, and they look like Litecoins, and they look like Bitcoins, which I think is pretty cool. And we have those for sale as well through the links, the affiliate links. I'll leave you those. There's the Litecoin round one, and there is the Bitcoin round one. In fact, I want to show you those. I really find them very attractive. If you like, or you don't like, if you don't like Bitcoin or Litecoin, you think they're going out of business, even though they're not in business, well then you get one of these and you got a souvenir from when they're gone. And if you do like them, they're a nice representation of silver, and they're not much of a premium on these, and they are 999 pure silver. All right. De La Ville said they prefer gold. If I had to pick one, you can buy grams now. Yeah, I've seen those grams like in a card, says Pablo. Yep. I had some like tiny dimes of gold, said Andrew, Canadian Mint. Yeah, I think they make them as small as 1/20th of an ounce at the Canadian Mint. Pablo Pena says, I hope mugs don't get regulated. Yeah, I hope not too, because I've been pumping away here. De La Ville says, Lewis is a mug mining farm. Remember Mug Coin. I'm going to get a registered ICO out there for Mug Coin. Roger Henley. Steve Angelo has no shame selling his own ICO. Didn't know about that. De La Ville. So many of these early ICOs were pump and dump. Well, that was the nature because they were unregulated. And they didn't disclose if they had bought advertising space, a lot of these ICOs. So it was obvious to me what they were because I had done securities work. But, all right, digital gifts. But you never know how they're going to look at this stuff. Okay, we got a lot of comments here. Let's see if I got back on here. Yep, got cut off again, but I think I got back on. All right, let's see. We're back on. We're always getting cut off here. It's a game changer. All right, let's get back to the comments here. I hope mugs don't get regulated, said Pablo Pena. Lewis has a mug mining farm, says De La Ville. Does this mean Bitcoin will soon be a coin debt? No, I'm going to do an ICO. I'm going to do a game-changing Smaulgld mug token pre-sale. Yeah, so many of those early ICOs are pump and dump, says De La Ville. We talked about that. All right, digital card. All right, what else do we got here? Are Roman mugs valuable, asks Roger Henley. Yes. Roman mugs have been drinking vessels for thousands of years. We could not lead our lives without mugs. And then glasses came a little later. They invented the ceramics first and then the glass. And but Mugs are money, period. All right, let's see. J Snip Pumper. Let's see. All right. ASMR people, pre-1982 Canadian nickels are 999 nickel. Wow. Is that true? Because the American nickels are not. They're only 25% nickel and 75% copper. That would be interesting. All right, let's see. Too hot here to be drinking coffee, says Roger. Today's a cold beer day outside in the garden. But Roger, I want to show you what Roger did because of the shipping. But I believe you can get decent shipping through the Smaulgld Zazzle store. And so if you check that out, I got the link in the notes. You can check it out. For me to send it would cost you like $20 to ship. And I have done some international shipments from Smaulgld directly. My cost for a continental U.S. shipping is between $7 and $9. But to send it to Australia or anywhere costs a lot more. But I want to show you what Roger did once. He made his own Smaulgld mug because he thought the shipping was too expensive. But now with the store, you can order your own. But here's what he made here. I love this one. He's got a Smaulgld game-changing mug in a glass there, or a plastic cup. And then he's got his Aussie silver there, those kangaroos. Seth Shepard drinking coffee but not Smaulgld mug. I need to buy one. Yes, indeed you do. If you order one tonight, I'll throw in a Smaulgld Game Changer eraser. Pack it up, put a note in there, and ship it out tomorrow. It gets there in 2 days. Oh, where's Barry? Have you found a mint to make some silver coinage yet? I'd buy one at 2x spot. I've poked around. I'm trying to find someone who will make them to go. Yeah, 2x spot's probably what they would cost. I mean, I wouldn't make any money on them because the fabrication charge would be good. I don't know. If someone can find me somebody who will make, I don't know how many we would need. I would buy one or two, and maybe, I don't know, we might be able to sell a roll of them. I don't know if any... We could get someone to pour silver, too. I don't know. I mean, it'd be very easy to come up with a design. We just put the Smaulgld logo on the front, Game Changer on the back, and you're done. And you've got a nice souvenir or walking around ounce of silver. That's worth paying, a little over spot. It's not an investment. It's just something to have. You keep it in your mug. If you put that in your mug and you leave water in it overnight, it purifies it, supposedly. This isn't doctor's advice or anything, or medical advice. That's the two things you can't do. You can't pump securities and you can't give medical advice. But I understand that silver has some antimicrobial benefits, and they say in the old days they used to throw a silver dollar into the milk to keep it fresh. So maybe we can make these Smaulgld rounds or bars and use them, put them to use. All right. No, but I have not yet found one. All right. Seth, you're missing out, says Pablo. Okay. Let's see. You guys are talking about Cliff High. You guys don't know about Valley Low. Valley Low is my answer to Cliff High. And he's made some videos too. Check out Valley Low videos. All right, we got some Spanish language here. What do we got here? We already did Italian language with Matteo Salvini. Let's see. Que onda, compadre Smaulgld. All right, let's see. Cliff High dazzles. Talking about Cliff High. Will Macron resign? Seth Shepard, yes, those Litecoin rounds are slick. I bought one. I have one of them. I think it's just cool to have. Again, 10 years from now, if there's no more Bitcoin or Litecoin, you've got a nice souvenir. It's an ounce of silver. It's not twice the premium. It's not nothing like that. And or you can just get rid of it for spot. I mean, it's not. I think it's a nice. I'm gonna need a tube of those, says Sam Shepard. Yes, and I make $15 when you buy those, so I really do appreciate that. We can pump mug coins, says Pablo. You guys are talking about Cliff High again. Coinflation has a Canadian section. Oh, okay. I was just over there before I got booted off of this thing. Let's see. The Canadian section, are they really $9.99? Is it? There's one called Coinflation and one coin called Coin Inflation. And I think, let's see, countries. No, they do have it. We're going to check out Canada. So a Canadian nickel from, yes. No, I don't think you're right. because a Canadian nickel, no, hold on, you are right. A Canadian nickel from 55 to 81 is worth nearly 5 cents, which is more than a U.S. nickel, which is 3.5 cents. And then the nickel from 82 to 99 is only worth 3.2 cents. So that's probably, they probably made the Canadian nickel after 82 the composition like they have with the U.S. nickel. But it looks like you're right that the nickel from 55 to 81 was probably all nickel, and therefore it has a higher premium. Well, thank you for that, ASMR people. All right, we sold out. Well, that's good. Roger Henley says, Smaulgld will hopefully doing a video on these holidays. My Smaulgld mug will be 3D printable. Make a stamp, yeah. Lewis, my Smaulgld mugs are biodegradable, but yours are not. Yes, but yours are copyright infringing, Mr. Henley. So there's probably a downside there. You got a little legal liability on the but the long arm of the law from the U.S. to Australia probably won't reach you. So you could probably make thousands of those knockoffs, and nothing will happen. Good for beer pong. All right, everyone. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. Tomorrow night tomorrow's Sunday night. It is the 23rd. It'll be the last night. I will come back on the 26th. I'm going to take Christmas Eve and Christmas night off. But tomorrow I want to go through the Louis Gohmert social media legislation that he's proposing that would really screw Google and Twitter and Facebook if it gets passed. And I've got some examples on that. And then we're going to do Indian and silver imports for the month of October I have, and I'll have charts made for you by then. So in any event, no point in saying Merry Christmas now, so we'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you very much. Sign off.